Yeah.
Right. Hello, Paul. How you doing? So, Mr. Paul Cheneour. Okay, you've been on this podcast before. How
No,
are you anyway?
no, I haven't been on this podcast
You
before.
have, a long
Have
time
I?
ago.
Oh,
And
right.
you don't even remember. It was such a momentous.
Uh,
So,
did we? I don't think we did it live. I don't think we did it over Zoom. I think we did it live together. Did you record it or something? I can't.
yeah, it was. It was near the beginning when
Ah,
when we did that. So, yeah, you were one of the
yeah.
early victims of the.
I think that was
But
a face-to-face job.
yes.
Yeah.
So, but for people who
Mm.
don't know what you do, it might be
Ah,
just an idea just to say what you do.
okay.
Um,
And how we know each other as well.
yes, that might be a good idea.
Yes. I think first of all, I'm a professional flute player. Have been for over 50 years or so, and specializing firstly in jazz, then classical music, Arab, Indian, and multicultural ethnicities, if you like, and then fusing it all together in a spontaneous live compositional point of view. I think that covers pretty much
Yeah, that's well put, actually.
what I tend to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And we met when I was teaching at in Gravesend, I think. No,
Actually,
we met
no,
before then.
no, I know. No, I'll tell you what it was. I was putting together a big a concert
Yeah.
for a.
Was it a festival in
It was a food festival,
Yeah.
as you do, right? So
Yeah.
it was it was called Eurofest, and a
Mm.
friend of mine said that they wanted, you know,
Yeah.
they had a few sort of main acts that they were
Yeah.
going to use. If you remember, there's people like Bilk and
Yeah. Yeah.
Chaz and Dave,
Yeah.
um, and somebody else, wasn't it? Was it
Alan.
Alan Price? Yeah, it was Alan
Yeah.
Price.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was sort of charged with getting people
Mm.
during the day to give them a bit of a showcase because obviously a lot of people going to
Yeah.
this food festival, but the weather was atrocious, if you remember.
Hmm. I remember.
And that's where you sent me a recording
Yeah.
of you playing,
Mm.
and I thought, wow, looks amazing. It sounds amazing because it was just you.
Solo flute.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I thought this would be interesting because obviously if you have loads of bands, you've always got that thing of,
Yeah.
one band going on, another, and I was sort of stage managing. So I thought to have a couple of people that were just on their own.
Yeah. Just
But
solo
yeah,
performance, just mic and press the button and that off you go.
that's right. And because it was great, wasn't it? So it was the first time we met. And we pretty much hit it off straight away, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
two of us. Um,
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And then we met up again when I was teaching in Gravesend, taking
Yeah.
over from some other flute teacher.
Yes. Yes. And you also you came and did some recording
Yeah,
with the band, didn't you? With
yeah, yeah,
Retouch.
yeah.
It's funny actually because I've been digging out a lot of those recordings recently because I'm working on a new album. So
Right, yeah,
it's
yeah.
great sort of listening back to that stuff. Yeah, that was good.
Mm.
So yeah, and we just sort of done a few bits and pieces of, kept in contact, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah. And our paths have crossed every once in a while, and we keep on keeping on, basically.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, the reason
Excuse me. Right.
so the reason I sort of invited you
Mm.
back on for this
Yeah.
is because I'm working on another book. And this one is sort of aimed at creatives,
Mm.
particularly musicians. And one of the elements that I did in the last book, I recorded an interview with somebody. We
Mm.
transcribed it, and it became a chapter of the book. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, that worked really quite well. And I thought I would do this
Mm.
with some key sort of people, you being one of them,
Mhm.
about certain aspects of what makes a successful musician who can
Mm.
can use their craft,
Yeah.
make a living out of it, or just allow that their musical skills to
Mm.
enhance their lives. It's
Yeah.
not all about people making money necessarily.
Well, it probably it's more about surviving and being able to do what you want to do,
Yes,
not, partly and wholly, if you like, but
yes,
from your creative aspect,
yeah,
rather than having to go and drive a van or a taxi for 8 hours and then be so knackered that you can't actually do what you want to do.
exactly,
But
exactly.
and it and I think that one of the ways I've managed to do this is, excuse me again, um, is to have lots of strands to the activity of playing. I mean, the central part is obviously keeping your skill set up and being able to do all the things that you need to do on call when you need to do them. Like being able to sight read in a studio situation for television and what have you. So what I've managed to do over the years, and I set this out really specifically because I mean, teaching allows you to keep in touch with the instrument that you're playing. You're
Yeah,
always picking it up. You're dealing with all the problems of the person that's in front of you. Plus,
yes,
you're looking at all all of your own problems in a completely different way.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that helps you analyze and make much more efficient what you are doing yourself.
yeah,
So I mean, I've always maintained that I learn much more from teaching than
yeah,
I ever teach.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Honestly, one of the reasons we really hit it off is that actually we see the creative process and the world in very, very similar ways.
Yeah, 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 I
And
agree.
what you're saying there, I totally agree that if you really want to learn,
Yeah,
teach.
teach. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. Okay, sorry, I
Yeah.
interrupted you. Carry
Oh
on.
no, I mean, it's nice at observing what we are doing and how we actually communicate with each other as well,
Mm.
which is also a fundamental part of playing, which is the
Yes,
communication aspect.
yes,
Um, because you're not communicating directly with speech, which can be misinterpreted. You're communicating from with sound, heart to heart, and without the misconception or the misconstrusion of misunderstanding.
yes,
So it's direct, which is the beauty of playing and the beauty of music, no matter what style you're playing in. So that's just one part of the aspect of it. The second part for me was playing in lots of different ensembles, bands, as a session player, if you like. And then you're called to play in from chamber music to orchestras to sessions in studios and what have you. So that forms another part, another strand of which some of it's paid directly and some of it's paid with royalties or what's called points. So you can have a buyout or you can have a buyout plus points or you paid a fee plus you get a small residual. That's another aspect, but then that will go forward to almost like having a pension. And the other part about it is when you're or when I have been um, creating albums right from the word go, I think I started in 1987. I did the first album. Um, that was on a cassette, and then I did I started with in 1994 with a band called Impromptu Sweet Kafka, something like that.
Mm.
And with the intention of just keep recording and keep recording and keep recording and putting albums out. Again, I was taken up by a publisher, North Star, and they have been wonderful in dealing with all the aspects of putting the music into library. So
Right.
when directors and producers want music off the shelf, that's where they go to. And that produces a royalty. So there's an income stream from my activity. So and now since then, I have done 67 albums of my
Well,
own
there you
material. And in collaboration with other people,
go.
obviously. Um, and the royalty aspect goes up and down, but there's a stream of royalty
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which adds to an income. So from an aspect of selling the albums and performing them and so on, this is another aspect that everybody could have a look at for themselves, especially in this day and age. I think I was
Yes,
fairly ahead of the cast at the time.
you were, you were, and I would say you are actually. So because
Yeah,
I think in the book I put the thing about pillars of business, right?
yeah,
Which is very similar to you saying about different streams,
yeah.
because you've got to think in that
Multi
way.
multifariously.
Exactly. Yeah,
Mm.
you need lots of different aspects to what you do. Some of them will, as you say, will make money directly, and some of them
Yeah,
will make money
and
down
later.
the line, or they may just be a creative thing that if you're clever with how you think about
Yeah,
money, that could be your advertising budget,
absolutely,
you know.
absolutely.
Um, now, so that's the sort of functionality thing, but I'm particularly talking to you.
Mm.
This I want to sort of go down the rabbit hole about
Mm.
the psychology of how we perceive reality, right? Just putting that
Oh yes, yeah, yeah,
right, because one of the things I think is a real issue, and I would say it's a real issue within society because
mm.
you could measure this by the amount of people who suffer from depression and all the rest of it, right?
Yeah,
Canaries in the coal mine
yeah,
are the young people and the elderly,
yes,
right? So
yeah.
they're the ones who shine up the fact that there is a problem.
Mm.
And a lot of it is, how shall I put this? Um, Reality is sort of overvalued. And as a
Yeah,
musician, as a creative musician, you
yeah.
realize all the time you're dealing with the imaginal,
Mm.
how the imaginal then sits on your map,
Oh yes. I
and
mean,
how your map then could be changed and could be developed and all the rest of it. And of course, if you talk to completely rational people,
mm.
they sort of look a little bit
Well,
puzzled.
they're locked into the idea, I feel, that what they're perceiving out there beyond the window and in the house is concrete, is the
Exactly.
reality. Whereas in fact, if you go to um, thinking from Sufi, from Confucianism, Taoism, and so on, and Buddhism, and you come to realize that the reality that you think that you see is an illusion.
Exactly.
And
Thanks. We've arrived. Exactly. 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 Okay.
yeah, so and then once they get locked into the idea, or until they have reached the point where they see that the reality that they're looking at, which they have actually created from a thought point of view,
Yeah.
is an illusion. then you can see it for what it is rather than what it appears to be.
Exactly. Exactly. That's very well put, Paul.
And then having done that, there's you're living in two worlds.
Yeah.
One is the world of the, this concrete reality that you are vibrating at the same level at, which makes it appear as though it's real.
Yeah.
And the other one is the spiritual reality, which is beyond the illusion. And that is the real world where you come from and where you go back to.
Yeah.
And it's this in ability to be able to transcend or cross between the two all the time, so that I'm trying to think of the right way of putting it. So you're always finding a bridge. No, excuse me again. Nah. You're finding a bridge between the reality that you think is real and the reality that is really real.
Yeah.
And then within that, you've got the scope to be as creative as possible.
Yeah.
And then you're using whatever form and plastic art, if you like, or even concrete in science. Science is no different to art. And it is all the same. It's all one.
Yeah.
And there should be no real differentiation. It all comes from thinking and intuition and inspiration or aspiration and then manifestation.
Yeah.
So that you're bringing into a manifested world the idea that appears in your head.
Yeah.
And
now, the reason I think this is really essential for musicians, and it's funny because I was talking to somebody who is a very logical musician. Yeah, not yesterday, the day before.
Yeah.
And he was talking to me about the book, and he could understand a little bit about the elements of NLP that would be very valuable to him. And strangely, one of them is actually quite bizarre, where people who practice in the same room all the time will have a problem playing those things in another room.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right? Because obviously so much of what we do is contextual. So the room that we're in feeds us. It's just that same thing. We were talking about this when people forget things. They have an idea, they walk out the room, they go to get something, they go into another room. It's like, what the hell am I in here for?
Yeah.
And they come back into the room they originally had the thought, and the thought just comes straight back.
Exactly.
Right? So, okay. So he could grasp that, and he could work. He could think, that is really valuable. Explain to people.
Can I just interrupt the thought on the room, though? Is that what you do is you find that when you're making the sound in the room, that you're making the room vibrate, and you're finding the sweet note of that room. So if you're always in the same room, you then have difficulty in finding the sweet note in another room.
Yes.
Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very well put. I just say to people, you just need to play in other rooms because you know what I mean. Anyway, so so the point about that is there are elements about how you expressed how things from your experience, right? Where we straddle, and the two sort of the world of form and the Now, you said, and this is the point that you made a comment which I thought was really good, which was the addiction to thinking.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Because sorry, go on.
No, because that epitomizes what's effectively the canaries in the coal mine. This thing of thinking that becomes you're addicted to the thing about, oh my God, something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
Oh my God, if I don't do this, this will happen. Yeah. And all that sort of stuff. Instead of it being, well, all of this is just an idea in your head anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think this is a really important thing.
Yes.
in the way that we see the world as an artist or as somebody who creates.
You see, I would go a little bit further than this and say there are people who are following, and there are people who are thinking or leading, and discovering. Because
Yes.
I don't like leading, and
No, no, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
so using the word to discover
Mm.
about the reality that you are manifesting, if you like,
Mm.
from thought, from inspiration, from all the aspects of doing something. And this doesn't preclude anybody else
No,
outside of music. It is,
no,
it,
absolutely.
yeah,
That's the point we're getting at. This is
yeah,
like massively
yeah.
important.
You can be a bricklayer, you can be a
Yeah.
mechanic, you can, but you employ all of these things that we're talking about
Yeah.
because in order to be able to play, you have to have a skill.
Yeah.
In order to be able to manipulate an object, which we
Yes.
call guitar or flute or whatever instrument,
Yeah.
the same way that if you're a chainsaw person up in a tree chopping down a tree,
Yeah.
it is in a way it's exactly the same, or a samurai warrior.
Yes.
So that
Or a businessman selling something, an entrepreneur selling something, because you're still
exactly,
manipulating.
yeah,
I don't want to use that word, negatively. What I
yeah,
mean
yeah,
is the environment that you're in order for you to
you're,
negotiate something, to make something happen.
yeah,
You're still using a skill
yeah,
that you are manipulating in
yeah,
order to.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Manipulate. Unfortunately, the word
yeah. I
manipulation
know
is a has got really bad connotation.
it's
But
loaded. I know. I
yeah,
know.
you're I can't think. I'll think about
Yeah,
it.
but we'll just keep that there because as long as we understand it,
Yeah,
we'll just unload the baggage from the word.
exactly. Yeah.
But it is still, using
Mm.
just in the same way as you could say, well, you're manipulating. When you breathe.
Exactly. Well, exactly.
And
So
of course, air is a good one because you already said the word inspiration, which of
yes,
course is to breathe in.
exactly.
All right. And then aspiration.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And because it's like before something can be manifested, you have to take it in to yourself,
you do.
and then you expire. You
Yeah.
inspire is take in, and exhale is to breathe out. So it's like in mathematics, you have zero, which was invented because in music there is no zero.
No.
It is only manifested. But in order to manifest, you take it in first and then breathe
Yes.
out. Whereas
Yes.
in
Here's the other interesting thing is somebody could turn around and go, well, of course you can have silence. But of course, we all know actually that silence is music anyway.
exactly because it
Yeah, right? Okay.
exactly so, yeah.
Yes.
And when the silence is deafening,
Yes.
then it is so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Um, and that is almost like a sort of contradiction in terms, but we know what we're talking about in
Yes, we
that.
do.
Yeah.
Nobody else does, but we do. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So it I'm just trying to get back to this word manipulation. It is making something into something else.
Alchemy.
It is an alchemical process,
Yeah.
which now they have understood that frequency
Yeah.
is once you have everything in motion, then that produces frequency.
Yeah.
And in this particular vibrational reality, you have motion. So
Yes.
as motion, then motion from motion comes matter,
Yes.
and light is a derivation of that, and
Yeah.
mass is a way of um, expressing the beauty of it because it has to be balanced.
Mm, mm,
So in equations, you have the left must equal the right,
mm.
and so the
And
whole
just in
thing
the
is
same way
balanced.
as in
Yeah,
economics, if money isn't moving,
yeah,
money loses value. I don't mean
exactly.
that from the point of view of interest. The very
Yeah,
fact that economies work on
and it circulates.
exactly
Yeah,
money moving.
has to move.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's the same principle, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
So
so this thing about addiction to
yeah,
thinking.
because we have been primed or
Yes,
encouraged
that's putting it very nicely, actually.
within the education system. As soon as you've learned to speak, you're told to shut up
Exactly. Yeah.
and listen,
Yeah.
uh, and then do what you're told.
Yeah.
And instead of running around, you're told to sit down and shut up,
Mm.
which means that you've been cut off from your experience of what you think then life is about. And you've been then trained into a way of thinking. And this, and then you're told things are right or wrong.
Yes. And you then focus on the things that you got wrong,
Yes, exactly.
which
Uh,
is a very interesting hypnotic
yeah,
command, right?
exactly. And to unlearn that, once you've gone through the sausage machine, then you've got to, you spend most of your time unlearning.
Yeah.
But within the process, what we find is that there's the way that people are being, oh, I'm trying to think of the right words. They're being encouraged, which is to follow a path that is preordained and predestined, because then they will fulfill the function within the system that they are preparing to go into or are being prepared for. Within that becomes the guilt, the humiliation, the what's the other one? Blackmail, um, all all the things that are designed to keep you in within the system itself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Shame.
oh, absolute shame, guilt. I mean, this whole panoply of
Yeah.
negative emotion, if you like. Um, Within that becomes the addiction to thinking.
Yes.
And because all of the other addictions, like sugar, food, sex, drugs, any kind of drug, whether it's prescribed or self-prescribed or
Yeah.
whatever, anything that has, no, it can be coffee, it can be tea,
Yes.
it can
Yeah.
be absolute betting, it can be absolutely anything, alcohol particularly. And then once one has sort of overcome that notion of, or faced the idea that you are addicted to something,
Yeah.
then you have to look at, what am I addicted to?
Yeah.
And when I think that when you unpack all of that, one is addicted to the idea,
Yeah.
even beyond the substance itself.
Yeah.
Once you've got rid of the addiction to the substance, then you're still thinking about, it's like when you give up smoking, you still think, oh, I'll have a cigarette, or yeah, or all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You're still addicted to the idea and the thinking of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Or even the fact that I can't think of the word.
It's really difficult.
Yeah, there was a science teacher who came out with this term, which I've not really heard after that, where you have a mannerism that you
Mm.
do
Oh yeah,
that fulfills a function, right?
yeah,
And that's sort of like you're saying, being addicted to the idea.
yeah,
It's almost like you have to have something that you do that's functionary,
yeah,
that fills the space,
yeah,
whether that is having a fag,
yeah,
yeah, and even when that stops, you still like, what you're going to do, or chew some gum
yeah,
or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So displacement activity was the word,
Yes.
right?
Displacement. Yes. Well,
Displacement activity.
it's filling a void.
It's filling a void.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
Because the
the interesting
activity.
thing about the void is you sort of ultimately can't avoid the void, because
Yes.
as soon as you get to that point where, and you see this within any skill that
Mm.
you get that takes you to some form of mastery,
Yeah.
whether that's playing a musical instrument or,
Yeah.
you know, martial arts or
Yeah.
whatever, there comes a point where you cross that
Yeah.
bit where well, it's like you're saying, the idea of the
Mm.
just the idea of the thing
Yeah.
is sitting there,
Yeah.
right? You know, it's almost like you've got to get to that point where you start to see that actually, music's got nothing about all the scales and what
Yeah.
have you. There's this other thing that's going on that is the music, the art, and
Mm.
all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And you could make that with nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting very zen here, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it is that sort of thing, isn't it?
Mm.
So you see, going back to the thing about the addiction to thinking,
Mm.
I was talking to somebody today, actually. I was teaching somebody this morning, and he's a bass player. And we sort of toyed around with the ideas of, what we think that bass does.
Mm.
Again, addicted to the idea of what the bass does, right? And we've done a number of things which has sort of unlocked that and
Mm.
taken it away from what it is that you should be doing. Like the guitar is playing something that just sits there, and the bass is free to do whatever it damn well wants, right?
Yeah.
And then I sort of messed around with this sort of portal thing where, the sort of, there's no gravity within the chords. You can
Mm.
go where you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
And then we got to the point of like, well, there's no chords, it's just you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then see what happens, you know. And then you start to see the bits that you're addicted to.
Yeah.
Bass is always going back to this to start the groove, and then it
Yeah.
will go wander off, and then we'll go back to the thing again, right?
Mhm.
None of that is wrong. It's just that expression of what is it that we're doing, really?
Yeah. It's an accepted stylistic
Yeah,
fashion.
yeah, addicted to that,
Yeah.
whatever that is. Again, same sort of thing. So
Yeah.
that sort of thing of
Whereas
understanding
if
what the map is.
is a bass player a front man, that's it.
Well, yeah, he would be now. Probably wouldn't have been in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The bass player. All those sort of things that bass players believe they are.
Yes.
Unless they're Phil Lynott, of course, or something, or
Yeah.
Sting.
Or
And
Stanley
then
Clarke.
Stanley Clarke. Then comes something completely different. Marcus Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is that thing of just even the awareness that
Mm.
we're doing that
Yeah.
is liberating.
Mm. Oh,
And
yeah.
that's the point I want to get to with people, with this conversation.
Mm.
You don't have to go full blown, oh my goodness, I've just managed to dispel the illusion of reality type of
Yeah.
thing. It's not to be that.
Mm.
I'm now at some form of enlightenment, which of course is also an illusion. But anyway, let's just
Yes.
park that out there somewhere. But that sort of thing of even knowing the fact that we're doing this is
Mm.
liberating.
Oh, indeed. Yes. Because it's like being aware of being aware.
Yes.
And that is really important. Because I mean, some people when they get to the point of going, but I know that I don't know, which is where you start,
Yes.
and then you know that you don't know, and then
Yeah.
knowing that I don't know knows me and I know it,
Yes.
and allows you then to go further.
Yes.
If further is part of a reality anyway, because it isn't.
No. But it's changing where you are.
Yeah, it's the perspective.
Yeah.
So it's what you're always looking at is perspective. So, and because you are manifested in this reality, that's where your perspective starts.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of your life experience is the notion of your perspective on what you think is real,
Mm. Yeah,
and
exactly.
and everybody else is joining your theatre because you're creating all of these aspects in order for you to learn
Yeah.
who you are,
Yeah,
so that
exactly.
so
Yeah.
that you become self-realized within the perspective of your incarnation.
Yeah. So the interesting applications here with for
Yeah,
musicians, right?
yeah.
Or just, or okay, anyone, but let's just
Anybody,
say
yeah,
musicians, right?
yeah,
Your perspective and how you realize how you are addicted to a particular way of belief
yeah,
about yourself and the world.
because that comes from nurture as well as nature.
It comes from nurture. And here's a good one from the point of view of nurture. When you work with some musicians that you don't get on with,
Hmm.
and then you look at it and think, well, maybe this might be me.
Mm. Oh
Okay.
yeah,
Or certainly my interaction
yeah,
with this person that is at least 50% me.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So that changes the potentially what that relationship is with somebody that you didn't get on with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It might transform it
Mm.
and could do. And that's just with other musicians. And can you think
Yeah,
about, well, that's true with life generally, right?
and with all relationships, with
With all
people.
relationships, with
Yeah,
all relationships with all
yeah.
people.
You do
So
you do draw in people to beat you over the head occasionally to make you
you
wake up.
do, you do. That is an interesting point. Now, I'm a strong believer in this, that
Mhm.
we act like beacons
Yeah,
to
yeah.
things, right? And the expression of that I normally pick on is like you've decided that you're going to buy a new car or whatever,
Mm.
and it's going to be this type of car and it's going to be in blue. And then you start seeing that everywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
yeah,
it's not that they didn't exist before,
yeah.
but you know they exist now because you keep seeing them.
And you're noticing
You're
it
noticing them.
because it's uppermost in your thoughts.
And you're almost, but because there is an element of this, you're almost finding yourself in the places that you will see those things,
Yes, yes, absolutely.
which is you now being, and we're doing this all the time, but we're unaware of it,
Oh, yeah,
right?
it's the subconscious leading and the unconscious, if you like, leading.
Exactly. And of course, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this where they discover places that they really like.
Mm,
And there's a couple of examples that I can use where people discover that their ancestors lived there.
hmm
I
mm,
know of at least three cases of that.
mm.
Places that people just seem really to be drawn to,
Oh, yes, yeah, very
for
much.
no other reason. There's
Mm,
no reason that they
mm.
would like this
Well,
particular.
there's no logical reason.
No, yeah, sorry. There's no logical reason. Yes, there's no logical reason. Yeah.
But
Um,
there's another reason that not only are places, but there are people, there are
yes.
community, there are energetic lines,
Yeah.
which we call ley lines and so
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And there are places where you can go and you feel comfortable. There are other places you go and you just go, no, I shouldn't be
Exactly.
here.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So the point about that is that there's this sort of, the stuff that's happening under the radar, right?
yeah,
That's actually making your world manifest,
yeah,
and you're not consciously aware
yeah.
of what those things are.
But
And
then you become once your perception or you're sensitive to that perception, then you start recognizing things.
yeah, you do. And the interesting thing about that, and I'm sure
Mm,
we've spoken about this sort of stuff before anyway, that you actually can see where you're going,
mm.
right? You don't know what the itinerary is,
Oof, yeah,
right? But you are fully aware that you are being pulled and pushed into a particular part. You know, you're in a stream
Yeah.
of flow. And when you are aware of that, as soon as you start to think about the things that you would like to do,
Hmm.
it starts to manifest in a way that is sort of uncanny. And musicians get this all the time because you meet the musician who's exactly the person to fulfill the thing that you were thinking about doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
I mean, case in point is that the recent album that I did, the Water Dragon Temple with Zhu Yang. Um, I mean, the whole thing was synchronistic. I met her at Cafe Oto. She just said, "Oh, I can do that." We organized a session. We did the whole album in a day and a half. No planning, no anything. Just played it, and it sounds as though it's totally composed.
yeah,
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 and so easy. There was
yeah,
no problem at all,
no,
and it was like
exactly.
I haven't done anything.
No, and no, that's
That's it's
that
effortless.
is the point, isn't it?
It's effortless.
It's
Once you
effortless.
when you're going with the flow
Yeah,
of this synchronicity,
yeah,
the thing should be as effortless as water going down a stream without
yeah,
hitting a rock.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And you know,
And
I,
effort
we've
is
spoken about this a lot because
yeah,
we both have those experiences, and
yeah,
we've sort of spoken about. And you sort of, and again, you know that when things start to, there's this little bit of a something's not quite going right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, the best thing to do is not do anything.
Exactly. Yes. Not doing
Not doing
is
exactly,
incredibly
exactly.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely is right.
Because
Um,
what's happening then is if you then start overthinking and over analyzing what you think that you want as opposed to what you need,
exactly. Yes. Yes.
and then you're what essentially you're doing is you're fighting yourself.
Yeah.
So because you haven't learned to relax and therefore you haven't unlearned all that conditioning,
Yeah. Yeah.
and once you start fighting yourself, you're always going to come a cropper.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly. I mean,
and
that's my traditional first question, which we didn't sort of
mm,
do in the way I normally do it, is what you do. And it's a trick question because
yeah, yeah.
it's like, I don't really care what you do,
Yes.
because but it just gives it's an opening gambit, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Conversation to happen.
Exactly.
Um, and obviously I have people on because I know there's certain things that they are involved in that are really fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But of course, those things are just points that would
Well, yeah,
that know nothing without the full context of what the
yeah.
person is, what they're being.
Well, they're
You know,
like signposts
yeah,
that they're pointing towards something
yeah,
and within the function of whatever that person's actually doing.
yeah, 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 exactly.
It's like
So
playing scales and playing pieces by other people. And you're using their thinking.
yeah,
I mean, from a musical point of view, just going back to what I actually do, is that I play all this stuff and I play loads of classical Bach and Mozart and all the rest of it, and Charlie Parker and all of those things. But the idea is not to use them.
yes, exactly. Right, that's a brilliant one because I totally agree with this. You know, maps. Whether
Yeah,
that's your landscape, your scales, or whatever it is,
yeah,
your harmony and whatever. But there is this sort of peculiarity in the West where, again, addiction to thinking, right?
yeah.
People think, oh, to be a great musician, you need to do
Copy. You
whatever
need
it
to
is. Yeah,
copy and regurgitate.
read the music, blah blah blah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, because obviously I'm coming from a sort of a rebellious instrument in the guitar. That all the great electric guitar players,
yeah,
minus maybe two, couldn't read a note of music.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, Now, there's nothing wrong with reading music. I'm not
yeah,
saying
yeah.
that, but the trouble is the way that music developed, the idea of writing music was really basically for the church to
Oh
make
yeah,
sure that you weren't going to have any heretics
exactly.
writing
Well,
pieces of music that sounded like they come from some sort of Islamic enclave in the.
well, plus the fact that it took 10 years to learn the catechisms back in 1000 years AD. And and if somebody was ill or they died, then you've lost 10 years of music.
Yes,
Whereas if it was written down, it only
yes,
takes a year to learn,
yes,
and it's then given for posterity, so that people then the next person can come along and do the same thing.
exactly.
Whereas before, when you had an oral tradition, everything changed with each person that learned
See,
something.
there wouldn't be a problem in the East because everything is changing anyway, if you
Yeah, yeah,
sort of say.
exactly.
But in the West, it's not, because the thing is that there is a book that
Yeah.
tells you the truth, right?
Ah,
So we're back again, we're back to this idea of an addicted way of thinking that
yeah,
bleeds into everything else.
yeah,
So if you've got that, then everything else needs to be,
yeah.
you know, written
Pres-
down, right?
Prescribed.
Prescribed.
Yeah.
Yes. See,
And
that's a great word, isn't it?
yeah, but
Prescribed means to be written down.
prescribed, prescribed.
Prescribed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why. I mean, if you take it as two words rather than one, but it was therefore the extension of what happened was is that you had people solely composing and then writing it down and giving it to the performer, and the divide between the composer and the performer widened to such an extent, whereas the way that it is taught now in the West is that you're not really allowed to be the composer and the performer in classical music, in music colleges and so on, because the way that they behave is such that it's almost an unwritten rule that you don't cross,
Mhm.
because they're training you to be an orchestral player, to fit in
Yes.
with an orchestra,
Yes.
make a harmonious or sound,
Yes.
so that if you're a soloist, you don't fit into that system at all,
No.
and
No.
it is completely contrary. But now it's changing. Whereas I say, I think I was ahead of the pack at
Yes.
that particular
But
time.
it is an interesting thing. And, obviously with everything, there's good and bad,
Oh
So,
yes,
so
yeah,
when you think about, orchestral music, it's fantastic. And you
yeah.
couldn't do that without people being able to stick to the
You need
score
the
and all the rest
skill.
of it.
You need the skill of
Yeah.
being able to do that. But the skill that they promote is at the expense of creativity.
Yes, it is. So a friend of mine used to say, playing music, particularly as a guitar player or bass player or something, is like plate spinning.
Yeah,
How many plates do you want to keep on the spinning? Because, if you're playing contemporary music, you've got your improvisation and you've
yeah,
got, your ability to read music and play music by other people and whatever. And if you're into songwriting, then you've got your songwriting and all that. So in the end, you sort of have to go, oh, well, hang on a minute. How
yeah,
many hours have I got
yeah,
to do that? But again, if people realize that it could be more open than
yeah,
that you could be somebody who's a great reader but doesn't want to, that's fine as long
yeah,
as you know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, as long as you know.
And there's a
And
specialism within it.
yes,
Yeah, yeah. So
yes,
if you're going down a route to be a specialist in whatever form, and you can make a living at it, that's fine. And if that's satisfying for that particular person until a day when they wake up
yes,
to something else, or they find
yes.
that they've arrived at the limit of what they think that they can do with that
Yes.
particular specialization.
I did an interview with Heather Bentley. You.
And,
Well, she's a classical musician who lives
right.
in Seattle. But about, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15
Mhm.
years ago, she said she got to a point where she thought there was something definitely missing,
Oh, yep.
right? Um, and so she went and visited some jazz musicians and learned
Mm,
improvisation.
mm,
So now that's what she does as well. You know, she's similar to
Yeah,
you. She's a string player, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, but she does a lot of improvisation within, you know, where everything's up for grabs. You know,
yeah,
it
yeah,
can be quite anarchic, or it could be, you
yeah.
know, music for a film or whatever. But she was saying how difficult it was
Oh, yeah,
losing that thing of just letting go into
yeah,
improvisation and beginning to relearn how you could do that, because obviously she learned from a like
yeah,
incredibly young age,
yeah, yeah.
um, and it was like it was completely alien to her.
Oh, yes, it is because they don't know how to discover.
No,
This is the whole point. When you're dealing with classical musicians and the way that they've been taught and the educational aspect, which I think does so many kids such a disservice, and right up to the music colleges, it's exactly the same. I mean, I took Jonathan Snowden on a tour around jazz clubs, and said, I mean, because he's a fabulous flute player. Um, and I took him around these jazz clubs, and he just started playing scales. And I said, "Well, what are you doing? It's not jazz. That's not what you do." And he just looked at me as though I was completely alien.
mm.
And I got up and played, and he went, "How do you do that?" And I said,
Yeah,
"Well,
well, that is the thing that you know, you hear from people who are really great classical players. You know, they're
yeah,
really well trained,
yeah,
and then you can pick an instrument and just sort of start to play, just make something up, and
yeah,
it's like it's another world. They
oh,
just
yeah, yeah."
yeah,
Exactly. So, and the whole point is that they've never learned to experiment from one note to another, and what makes up a sound. What are the partials within the sound, and how do you want to move from one note to another note?
yeah,
Just that fundamental thing of how does it sound,
yeah.
and do I like it?
Mm,
And does that feel good for me? So
mm,
all of these questions that you've got to look at for yourself.
mm.
And then if I put it like a third, fifth, and then a flat five or something, then I go da 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 ba da dee da. And how does that feel? I mean, I was teaching yesterday a kid who's always been playing classically, and I've introduced the jazz idea. So we were talking about writing. So if you write vertically, that's like a classical bounce, one and two and three and four. Whereas jazz is like writing with sloping forwards. So you're going one, do do da 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 da. And he was sort of going, "Oh, this is very comfortable."
Oh, right, cool. That's
So he
interesting.
got it. He got it straight away.
Mm,
But I'm doing one in terms of the other.
yes, you're
So that
making a comparison to
exactly, so that he's not now feeling so alienated. So when I said swing it, and he goes sort of dum doo doo da da dee da. So
yeah.
it's long, short, long, short.
So that's an interesting thing about the rhythms and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that you're saying about swinging a
yeah,
line, and you know, taking a melody and then moving it, making it more
yeah,
flexible against the beat,
yeah, yeah.
which is like,
Ah, yes, it's where the one is.
yeah, where's the one? And that sort of thing. Again, we're back to this sort of almost uh, uh how can I put this, mysterious aspect
Yeah.
about
Well,
the
it's
feeling
time. Yeah,
of one.
and time,
Yeah,
and
how
and
time expresses itself
yeah,
through your pulse
exactly.
through music, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, or the pulse of the music. You know, in other
yeah,
words, everything relates to
yeah,
that thing
and
that
that, and it's flexible.
and it's flexible.
That's
Exactly.
what people find difficult is that the pulse and time is flexible
Yeah.
because they think it's got to be one, two, three.
No, no,
Uh,
and of course, a lot of things have been taught that way. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, the drummers that you meet now, everything is like they're really like. But the fascinating thing about that's quite cool if you're a guitar player because you can obviously then
yeah,
pull, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
because
Either side of it. Yeah.
I was listening to like a little interview with Keith Richardson. He was sort of
Oh
going,
yeah,
"Well, you really want to, you know, you really want to put the that note where people don't expect you to put it."
yeah, yeah,
but you need a good drummer to do that,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So it acts as that sort of thing.
But the
Um,
drummer isn't the one that keeps time. It's the bass player
no,
that keeps
well,
time.
the thing is, it's the elephant in the room, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
pulse that's in the room.
Exactly.
That the drummer is
Everybody's playing
almost the
around.
psychic,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
or the bass player, who's you know what I mean? They're the medium that's bringing in, your
Exactly.
Auntie Lil or something, right? You
Yeah,
know, the
yeah, yeah.
and that's expressing that pulse
Yeah.
that's in the room. So
Yeah, I mean, I've
uh,
said this to you before that where the one is in European music, you've got this sort of it's there and you can arrive at it there and you can leave it there. Whereas jazz is more like that. So arriving here and leaving it there. Whereas Mexican music is you arrive here and you leave here and you don't quite know where it is.
no,
And it's much, much, much more flexible.
yeah, yeah,
And Brazilian music and South
yeah.
American
I was going to say
generally.
Latin music has
Yeah,
got that thing, isn't it?
yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's that
Um,
shifting sense of
it's
one.
shifting. Yeah, that's right. And you get that sort of feel where you listen even like to the biophony
Yeah, yeah,
of that, right? So it's like you got that feeling that there are cicadas in there.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean? That,
yeah, yeah.
and it's got
Exactly.
that, and it's sort of doing this somehow,
Yeah, exactly. So
right? It's sort of pulsating.
and it as I say, it's arriving here and then leaving there. So that's where the one is. But that, by implication, is just shifting.
Mm.
So it's an interesting concept. I mean, time is an illusion, and lunchtime is doubly so. So
Exactly. I
Douglas
was
Adams.
I was talking to somebody who's an NLP bod, saying about time distortion.
Yeah, yeah.
That you can have a 1 hour lunch break that's
Oh, yeah.
magnificent that lasts for three.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's actually 1 hour, but
yeah.
your experience of it is it's much
Exactly.
longer.
Exactly. Like all maths lessons are terminally long,
Exactly.
as opposed to flute lessons, which go so fast.
Exactly. Exactly. But what he was playing was the concept of something that you really enjoy
Yeah, yeah.
takes longer.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
because again, it's all
yeah,
our relationship to
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, we are addicted to time.
Yes.
As that's the other thing, is that all of the things that we do are, if you don't do it with awareness, then you become addicted. So going back to this whole idea of addictiveness to thinking, in some ways it's a good thing, but when it is overdone,
Yes.
it becomes a negative.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, it's this
And
very similar thing. If you know that you're doing that,
yeah,
you can
not do it.
partake of that or
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
And
So
I
the
think that's the
choice
point. If you
the
want to
choice is
partake,
yours. Yeah, and that's the fundamental is the aspect of choice,
yes.
like choosing which note to play.
Yes.
And you don't choose it before you've done it, you choose it afterwards.
Yes.
You consider what you have chosen rather than consider choosing.
Yes. That's a very good point. Well, that's like the future drawing the
It
past to itself.
exactly.
We won't go down that rabbit hole for the moment, all right? Because brilliant. All right then. Paul, that's about an hour.
Right. Fabulous. Oh, yes. Yeah.
So that again, the time distortion. Because that didn't seem like an hour.
No, it seems
That's
like
great.
less than 5 minutes.
No, that's good. That's brilliant. Okay, so that was wonderful. Thanks ever so much. Now I will put some stuff up on the show notes about what you're
Yeah,
doing. So
yeah, yeah.
you'll have to send me some links and things, right?
Yeah, we're blah, blah, blah. There's more Zen Bicycle at the last Wednesday of every month. That's
And,
all
and that's down
at Vinotech, the wine bar down in Dover.
in Dover. So
Yeah,
Dover in the UK,
exactly.
just in case there's a Dover
Oh,
in
yes, there
the
is.
US.
There is a
There
Dover.
probably is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
and
always a doppelganger of
yes, There's
in
a
America
flight over
somewhere.
it's
Okay.
still the UK, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And there's lots of other bits and pieces, but we're filming Zhu Yang and myself down at Vinatech on the 10th of July. We're doing filming in the afternoon, then we're doing a gig in the evening, and we're filming everything because to make a promo video for the album to get some gigs in China, hopefully.
Yes,
Mm,
that sounds brilliant.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, that's good.
So there's all that.
I'm glad to hear you're still creating new
Still
possibilities
doing
and stuff.
crazy stuff. But yeah, I'm in the studio again doing a couple of albums very soon. In fact, I've got to do piano albums.
Oh yeah, well you were talking to me about that.
Yeah. I've got the stems now for the pads. So, and that's all done. And what I'm going to do, the stems, I'll do one with just literally stems and flute, one with stems and piano, and then one with stems, piano, and flute. And then just
Oh,
send it all off to North Star and see what happens.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that
Yeah,
sounds brilliant.
yeah.
Well, always like to hear your stuff.
You too. Yeah,
Cool. So,
absolutely.
okay, I'll just better say what I'm doing, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
okay, so um, I'm having a little bit of a travel round next week. I'm
Mm.
going down to Cornwall to do a talk at the school that I used to go to when I was 13. I haven't been in there since then.
Did
So
you go to school in Cornwall?
yeah, I used to go to school in Weybridge. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, because I was in Helston.
No, I know you were.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, right. Oh, so I didn't know
No,
you.
I'm up
You
north,
up
mate.
north? Yes.
Yeah, so I'm down there. And then on my way back, we're sort of having a convoluted journey down.
Right.
But on my way back, in Dorchester, I'm doing
Ah.
all the pre-production stuff for the next Red Touch album.
Oh, fantastic.
So yeah, you might be getting a call, mate, at some point.
No
All
problem
right.
at all. You just
Yeah, so that's all just pre-production stuff. So we get all
yeah,
the guidelines done. Like,
yeah. Oh,
we're off to
fantastic.
France to do that.
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah. Cool.
It's a huge pleasure.
That was wonderful. Thank you ever so much. And as always, all
My
right.
my pleasure.
All right, mate.
It's always a pleasure to talk
That's
and
great.
play. Yeah.
Don't disappear. I'll just say goodbye now.
Okay then.
Cheers.
Take care.